Hello and welcome. My name is Ray and I'll be your host here on Delta Brewing's blog or a website, or I really don't know what to call this, but I'll call it a blog, given that blog sounds like something that comes off the bottom of a primary fermenter, or maybe even the bottom of your cowboy coffee pot. Now, those of you who know me and have known me for quite some time know that I've been brewing beer now for some 40 plus years as both a home brewer and a commercial brewer. And some of you may remember Delta Brewing Company's brewery here in Sacramento back in the 1990s. Now, my goal here is to pass on what knowledge and experience I've gained through the years regarding brewing techniques, obviously equipment and ingredients, including water, hops, malt, and of course yeast. I will hopefully be able to give you ideas on building your own equipment, setting up your own home brewery, and introducing brewing to beginners, as well as imparting designs and techniques to the more advanced among you, and most importantly, doing this with an eye on cost. As I'm sure all of you know, hobbies can and do get very expensive. Hopefully we can find ways to keep the cost as low as possible. Now, with that being said, I know that there will be some among you out there that will spare no expense to advance your hobby. Well, we'll try to tackle that as well. Along the way, I will be giving historical background to the best of my knowledge, and you'll have to bear with me on this, given that there is a great deal of history behind this subject with many, many different and sometimes conflicting views. So those historians out there, feel free to contribute. I will, however, explore how beer was produced in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, and how that compares to the production of today's beverages, and of course that which many of you are looking for, and that is how to make your own, how to brew your own beer at home. So I will take it from the simple, how it was made then, to the sometimes ridiculously complicated, how it's made now. So with that being said, click through and enjoy, read, explore, or just satisfy your curiosity. But before I go, let me end this by dispelling some myths. Okay? Myth number one: round and conical fermenters. No one ever said that a brewing vessel has to be round. Round is easier to avoid hidden sharp corners and places for bacteria and pathogens to hide, but it isn't altogether necessary to use a rounded vessel. The Germans and Belgians, for instance, have been using square rectangular vessels for many years, and I do mean hundreds of years. Okay, myth number two: sophisticated equipment. How sophisticated do you really need it? Well, it doesn't take a lot of complicated and fancy equipment. It doesn't take thermometers, hydrometers, recirculators, stainless steel fermenters, and pressure-sensitive bottles to produce beer. Now, it does help, and it gives us longevity in the product of our labor, but if the Egyptians can make beer in clay jars 5,000 years ago, kept cool by burying them in the ground with a cork stuck in the top, then you can certainly make viable beer with a minimum of effort and very simplistic equipment. Okay, myth number three: beer is made with hops as a spice. Now, the only people who ever said you must use hops were the Germans in the Declaration of Reinheitsgebot, which means purity order, which was first instituted in Bavaria in 1487 and followed up more stringently in 1516 when Germany started to consolidate. In fact, they were so insistent that at one point the British declared that beer was a beverage made only with hops, as a spice, of course, but the real drink of Britain was ale, made with any other spice than hops. Now, you may have a little anger and some jealousy there, we don't know. But remember this: a spice is a spice, and it's completely up to the consumer or the brewer. Okay, myth number four: malted barley. Beer does not have to be made from malted barley or wheat. Civilizations and the so-called uncivilized have been making beer from whatever grains they have available to them for millennia, and many without ever malting those grains, but simply by wetting and fermenting. Now, does malting help? Yes, it makes it possible to extract as much fermentable sugars as possible and extends the usability of the grains to be used, but it isn't carved in stone. Unless maybe you actually live in ancient Egypt. Okay, myth number 5. That doesn't taste like beer. Everyone might be surprised to find that beer down through history reflected the flavors of the natural resources of the particular area in which it was made, and it still does. So if you like it, then it's what beer is to you. Now, for the beginners among you, the next video I'll go over the basic equipment needed for your brewing efforts and look at some of the alternatives for the traditional equipment commonly used by the home brewer. For the more advanced among you, I'll be posting videos on partial and full grain brewing and the equipment needed, as well as some of the ideas geared toward building your own equipment. So until then, stay tuned.